All right, y'all. What's up, man? Good morning. Good morning. Uh, Follow me on all the platforms. Welcome to the podcast for Soul. You can follow me on TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. All the podcasts for Soul. So I got the hearing information from the September 25th hearing in New York, where the judge gave both sides, the prosecution and the defense, the chance to give oral arguments about whether Puff should get acquitted in a Rule 29 or whether he should get a new trial. Now, Assistant U.S. Attorney Slavic, Mary Christine Slavic, who was on the losing team at the main trial, she is arguing that Puffy should not get a Rule 29 acquittal and that the conviction for the Mann Act should stand. In her argument, she brings up the fact that, which had nothing to do with what the hearing was supposed to be about, but nonetheless, she brought it up anyway, that Puffy kicked, punched, and there were drugs at some of the hotel nights and free calls. And Alexandra Shapiro came back and said, look, Mark Agnifilo already argued at the jury trial in his closing argument that those drugs were personal use and not as it was intended in the RICO, and that Puffy was acquitted of the RICO. So, stop bringing that up now. That's over with. And then Alexandra Shapiro goes on to state, and it's really starting to make Judge Submarinian, he's really starting to make himself look bad. Like I say, I never got the impression that he was racist or biased against Puff. I never got that sense. Like I say, I've always said that I thought he ran a fair trial because I was there every day. I saw it. Just because his rulings didn't go the way I wanted them to go, the way I thought they should go, doesn't mean that, like, I can state unequivocally and I know for a fact that he's racist or he don't like Puff. I can't say that. I don't even know that man other than in his function as a judge on the bench. Never talked to him in my life, so I don't know anything about him to judge him in that way. I've never had any encounters with him. But what I say he's making himself look bad is why. Alexandra Shapiro points out again, and she's been raising this point in all of her briefs and all of her letter motions and motions, that the Department of Justice over the last 75 years, it's their policy that they don't bring Mann Act cases unless it is a financial incentive involved for the person engaging in the prostitution. A purveyor of prostitution, a brothel, a pimp, that kind of thing. And it has to have some implications of trafficking in minors. Then they'll bring it. But with respect to how Puffy got convicted of it, and the only reason he got convicted of it was because it was attached to the RICO joint, right? That was the only reason they were able to bring it in the SEX trafficking. Because the SEX trafficking, like I just said, has to be a component of the Mann Act in order for you to be able to bring the Mann Act by itself. And Alexandra points that out again. And she comes out and she tells the judge that, listen, we wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the RICO charge. We wouldn't even be here with this charge, Mann Act, if it wasn't for the SCX traffic. And that this is an embarrassment to the United States. This is an embarrassment to America. Alexandra Shapiro told the judge that. And that she went in to talk about the racist history of the Mann Act. And I'm going to read it. The misogynist history of the Mann Act. And how Supreme Court judges going back 50 years always had problems with this law. And she's saying that here we are in 2025 and we still dealing with this. And another thing that the Southern District of New York Assistant U.S. Attorney Slavic was talking about, that the government regulates prostitution, right? Because it could lead to there's usually other criminal elements attached to it, right? Drug use, devaluing of property values in the neighborhood if it's a brothel, right? Crimes, robbery, and stick-ups near the brothel, and that's why prostitution is regulated. And Alexandra Shapiro is saying, yo, this was in a hotel room. This has nothing to do with no brothel, none of that, what you talking about. And, Judge Submarinian, the way I say he's making himself look bad is because he's trying to, appease both the prosecution and the defense, right? Rather than just really, man,
Honey, you gotta keep it family friendly on the train here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're
All right, thank you. Really, man, she came on, I guess I'm talking too loud. We're going to see what he says next Friday. But to me, looking at the facts and the arguments of this case and the arguments that the Southern District of New York is putting up now to maintain a conviction on the Mann Act is weak at best. And the arguments that Alexandra Shapiro is putting up, not just because I'm pro-puff, but her arguments, Shapiro's arguments, are based in law, factual case law, right? And he's got to see it. And I don't understand why my man just won't be like, yo, let's get up out of here, man. Yo, Puff, go home, man, to your family, and let's get out of here. All right, so this is page 43.
It's a challenge, but if you got hot coffee,
Page 43.
you fail the challenge. It's a bit more of a precarious situation.
So Judge Submarinian says this. What if I put y'all right here? If I put y'all right there, it's a clear picture, ain't it? It's a clear picture. What's up, man? All right. What's going on, man?
Good.
All right. If I put y'all back right there. All right, so Judge Submarinian says this. And Ms. Slavic referred to the facts of this case, and she pointed, for instance, to illegal drug use as being one of the things that the evidence in this case showed. And that would be one of the things that the government would have an interest in policing, which is associated with prostitution, even if it's between consenting adults. Alexandra Shapiro. Well, I think the only drug charge that was brought in this case was in connection with the RICO charge, which Mr. Combs was acquitted of. And as we discussed at length in the jury charge conference, and as Mr. Agnifilo argued to the jury, it's different when you're talking about personal use. So I don't think that is sufficient here. And I think that this is the reason that Department of Justice policy doesn't even say what Ms. Slavic said. Department of Justice policy specifically says that the statute, the Mann Act statute, should only be used against people who are running a business of prostitution or people who are exploiting minors or sex trafficking. Shapiro. Now I'm going to go to what she said. Now I'm going to go to what she said. Then the other U.S. attorney, Meredith Foster, check this out, what Shapiro said. The other thing I wanted to mention, this is Alexandra Shapiro. The other thing I wanted to mention with respect to that was that I believe Ms. Foster said that Jane and Cassie testified that they were paying for prostitution. And maybe they were at a different trial than I was at, but I don't believe either of them ever said that or ever suggested they were involved in prostitution or used that word in that way. So I want that to be clear. That is not consistent with the record. So I was trying to find it where Meredith Foster said that Cassie and Jane said that they were involved in prostitution, but I couldn't find it. But Shapiro, she found it. Alexandra Shapiro. Hold on. 51. Here it is. Here it is, y'all. It's on page 48. Page 48. This is Alexandra Shapiro. The last thing I'll say is just, I know the court is aware of this. The statute that Mr. Combs has been convicted of violating is possibly the most infamous law in the history of the United States Code. Its racist and sexist origins and early enforcement are well documented and beyond dispute. And even 100 years ago, in a very different age, the statute was being criticized by multiple Supreme Court justices who sought to limit it to commercial purveyors of prostitution. And even in its early days, and certainly later in the 20th century, many judges and juries refused to enforce it. We only talked about that a little bit in our brief, but it's discussed at length in this book, which we cited in case anyone is interested. The whole history of the statute is really, I would submit respectfully, an embarrassment to the United States of America. Nearly 75 years ago, as we've talked about ad nauseum, the Department of Justice stopped enforcing the law in non-commercial cases and has followed that policy to this day, other than in cases involving minors or sex trafficking. And under that policy, this case would never have been charged had the government not brought the other charges. But it was unable to prove those charges, and the jury rejected them. So what we're left with is a case about adults who traveled interstate and participated in a threesome. An adult couple that chose to have sex by bringing a third consenting adult into their private sex lab. It's unclear why this conduct should be criminal in 2025, even if the third person was a professional and was paid to participate. So, for those reasons, as well as all the reasons in our briefs, and which we have discussed today, we submit that Mr. Combs should be acquitted of the two Mann Act